When I bought my land right on the edge of the HOA neighborhood, I thought I had found the perfect spot, quiet, open, and just far enough away from the chaos of suburban drama. What I didn't know was that this HOA, especially its president, Karen, had a reputation for sticking their noses where they didn't belong. And I was about to find that out in the most ridiculous way possible. The land I purchased had a small creek running along the edge. Nothing dangerous, just a narrow stream that trickled year-round. But there was one weird detail the real estate agent casually mentioned. The only road the HOA residents used to access the far side of their neighborhood cut through a corner of my property. Technically, it was an easement, but the area around the road was uneven, muddy, and honestly kind of unsafe during rainy days. People would slow their cars down, tires slipping, trying to pass through without sinking into the dirt. So I decided to fix it. Not for them, but for me. I wanted my land to look clean, organized, and functional. I hired contractors, drew up plans, got permits, and spent a solid chunk of money to build a small but sturdy wooden bridge over the creek. It wasn't some rickety structure. No, I made it strong, functional, and even a little stylish. Something that would last for years without needing much attention. I paid for every nail, every beam, and every hour of labor myself. Not a single HOA dollar was spent. And honestly, I felt pretty good about the whole thing. A safer crossing, smoother access, and a nice improvement to my land. What I didn't expect was the reaction that not even a week later, a letter showed up in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was some friendly welcome letter from the HOA. You know, the usual, we look forward to being your neighbors type thing. Instead, it was a thick, overly formatted envelope stamped with the HOA logo like it was some official government document. When I opened it, I actually laughed out loud. The letter claimed that the bridge I personally built on my property fell under HOA jurisdiction, and therefore I was required to pay a $3.50 annual maintenance fee that I had to read it twice. Maybe 3 times. Because surely this had to be a joke, right? They had absolutely nothing to do with the construction. I didn't ask for their help. I didn't use their materials. I didn't borrow a single tool. And yet here they were demanding money as if they owned part of my land that I shrugged it off, assuming it was some mix-up. Maybe they sent the wrong letter to the wrong plot. Maybe their system registered the bridge as part of the shared road, and someone pushed the wrong button. I really thought this would be a quick, easy fix, but then the next day she appeared. Karen, the HOA president, the queen of clipped words and color-coded clipboards. The woman people whispered about at BBQs, but never confronted. She walked toward the bridge like she was inspecting a crime scene. I watched her from my porch as she poked her pen against the railings, scribbled on her clipboard, and shook her head dramatically like she had uncovered some kind of federal violation. Finally, she marched up to my front door. No greeting, no introduction, no smile. She tapped her clipboard and said, "This bridge visually impacts HOA aesthetics." That was her opening line. Not hello, not nice to meet you, not thank you for improving the road we all use. Just a complaint. And the most ridiculous one possible. She went on to explain that all structures that affect the neighborhood's visual harmony fall under HOA authority. According to her, the bridge had become an extension of their community, and therefore I needed to pay the fee immediately. Immediately. No discussion that I couldn't believe the audacity. I built the entire thing on my own land, with my own money, and with a permit they had absolutely no involvement in. And here she was, acting like I had trespassed onto their sacred kingdom by improving my own property. I calmly told her, "The bridge is on my land. I paid for it. It does not belong to your HOA." She tilted her head like she couldn't understand English. Then she launched into a speech about how shared visual space meant shared financial responsibility, and how if I refused to pay, the HOA would take appropriate action. She said this with the tone of someone threatening nuclear war. At this point, I realized this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This was Karen being Karen. The HOA wasn't confused. They weren't mistaken. They had seen something new, something useful, something they didn't control, and they wanted to take advantage of it. But the funniest part, she genuinely thought I would just hand over $350 a year because she demanded it. I stood there watching her lecture me like a school principal scolding a child. And all I could think was how ridiculous this whole situation was becoming. A bridge I built with my own money on my own land being claimed by an HOA I wasn't even a member of, and Karen wasn't done. Not even close. She adjusted her glasses, tightened her grip on her clipboard, and said, "We'll be sending you updated documents. Please sign and return before the end of the week." I almost laughed in her face. This was just the beginning, and she had absolutely no idea what she had started. After my encounter with Karen and her absurd claims, I realized something important. Arguing with the HOA was pointless. They weren't interested in facts, property lines, or basic logic. They were interested in control. So instead of wasting energy debating with people who lived in their own imaginary kingdom, I decided to let them dig their own hole. Publicly, officially, and embarrassingly. The very next morning, I contacted the county office. I explained the entire situation and asked for written clarification. It didn't take long. They pulled up the maps, the permits, the deed, everything. The answer was simple and beautiful. The bridge was 100% private property. No shared ownership. No HOA jurisdiction. No community claim. Just mine. They didn't just tell me. They sent me a formal letter with signatures and county stamps. A document that left no room for Karen's fantasies. And to make things even more airtight, I filed a private crossing notice, which designated the bridge as restricted access. Only authorized individuals were allowed to use it, and that authorization came solely from me. Once the paperwork was in motion, I decided it was time for a little visual clarification. That afternoon, I hired a contractor and installed a heavy steel gate at the entrance of the bridge. Not a flimsy chain or a symbolic rope. No, a full-size, dark metal gate with reinforced hinges, a locking mechanism, and a bright reflective warning sign bolted right in the center. Private access. No HOA entry without permit. I stepped back, looked at it, and smiled. It wasn't just a gate. It was a message, a boundary, a reality check. And oh boy, the reaction came faster than I expected. The very first HOA resident to discover the gate slammed on their brakes, so hard I heard the tires screech from my porch. They rolled down their window, stared at the sign, stared at the gate, then whipped out their phone like they had just discovered crime scene. A minute later, another car arrived, then another. Within half an hour, there were 6 vehicles lined up, blocked, confused, and absolutely livid. Because here was the real twist. That bridge wasn't just a convenience. It was the fastest way in and out of their neighborhood. Without it, they were forced to take an old, unpaved back road that wound through narrow hills and added 12 extra minutes to every trip. School runs? Delayed. Morning commutes? Ruined. Karen's grocery store runs? Catastrophic. People were honking, arguing with each other, trying to reverse out of the narrow space. One guy even got out of his car and shook the gate like he expected it to magically open. The chaos was instant and extremely satisfying. And then like a storm rolling in, Karen arrived. She didn't walk. She power marched toward me, her shoes clacking so fast it sounded like she was firing warning shots at the pavement. She waved her hands wildly, shouting before she even reached my fence, "You cannot do this. You are holding the entire community hostage." Hostage? Imagine calling a man a hostage taker for putting a gate on his own property. She demanded I remove the gate immediately. She claimed the bridge was a critical community pathway. She insisted the HOA had established rights due to long-term use. She even tried telling me she would fine me for obstructing access. That I just let her rant, let her steam build, let her voice rise higher and higher until she was practically vibrating with outrage. When she finally paused long enough to inhale, I reached into my folder and pulled out the one document she couldn't fight. The county ruling, stamped, signed, official, unarguable. That I handed it to her calmly. "This," I said, "states clearly that the bridge is private property. You have no authority here. You try to charge me for something that doesn't belong to you. So now access is restricted. That's all." Her face turned a shade of red, so bright, I swear you could have matched paint samples to it. She shuffled through the papers, reading the lines over and over, desperately searching for some loophole or error that wasn't there. The more she read, the more her expression twisted. Frustration, disbelief, anger, humiliation, all layered together like a human volcano seconds before eruption. Behind her, a crowd of HOA residents stood watching, waiting, whispering. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at her. The president, the boss, the woman who always claimed she knew the rules better than anyone. And here she was, holding proof that she was wrong. She finally snapped the paper shut and hissed, "This is not over." But it absolutely was for her, because from that moment, the entire HOA learned that I wasn't the type to be bullied, intimidated, or financially manipulated. And Karen learned something even more painful. She had zero power on my land. What she didn't know, though, is that the real twist was still coming to be why the next morning, things had escalated faster than even I expected. I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages, even emails with subject lines like urgent. Please respond immediately. At first, I thought the HOA was just doubling down on their tantrum. But no, this was something far better. Apparently, the HOA's main security gate had malfunctioned overnight. The motor burned out, the keypad froze, and the whole thing was stuck shut like a giant metal mouth refusing to open. Under normal circumstances, that would have been annoying, but not a disaster. Except today, there was an emergency. An ambulance needed to get into the neighborhood for a medical call, but the main entrance was sealed shut. And because of ongoing construction on the second access point, the only functional route into the community was the bridge.my bridge and my private crossing.my restricted access, fully locked, steel-gated bridge. And the person with the key, me, the same guy they tried to charge $350 for absolutely nothing. Within minutes, every member of the HOA board was blowing up my phone. Some called politely, some called angrily. Karen didn't call at all. She didn't even bother pretending anymore. But her desperation came through others. They all used the same fake-friendly tone. "Hey neighbor, we were wondering if you could, temporarily open the gate. It would really help the community if you could assist us right now. We're all hoping you might be willing to cooperate." Cooperate. Now, they wanted cooperation. Funny how quickly their attitude changed when they needed something that a few minutes later, one of the board members finally said it outright. "Emergency services can't enter without your access. Please can we meet?" And just like that, the power shifted completely. They set up an emergency meeting at my place. The same people who wouldn't even acknowledge my property rights a few days earlier. They arrived looking nervous, sweaty, and a little too polite. Karen was there too, standing behind them like a wilted houseplant, refusing to make eye contact. I listened as they tried to smooth talk their way through excuses. It was all a misunderstanding. Maybe the letter had unclear language. I'm sure we can resolve this like respectful neighbors. I let them ramble. Let them try every angle. Let them drown in their own sudden humility. Then, when they finished, I finally spoke. "I'll reopen the bridge," I said calmly, but under new terms. The room went silent. I handed them a simple paper. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. Just 3 conditions. A written apology from the HOA acknowledging they had no authority over my property. Complete removal of all fake fines, fees, or claims at a quarterly toll payment for every vehicle using the bridge. Emergency vehicles excluded. First, they tried to argue. The vice president said it was unreasonable. Another board member complained about the cost. Karen muttered something under her breath that definitely wasn't friendly. But then the homeowners behind them started speaking up, loudly, angrily. They were furious, not at me, but at the HOA. They blamed the board for creating this mess. They blamed them for picking a fight they couldn't win. They blamed them for turning a simple, functional bridge into a neighborhood crisis. Pressure built fast, and the board finally caved. They apologized in writing. They canceled every made-up fee, and they agreed, reluctantly, to pay the toll every quarter to maintain access. Once everything was signed, I unlocked the gate and reopened the bridge. But now, instead of costing me money, it earned me money. Every car that crossed my property was putting cash straight in my pocket. The best part, the absolute best part, came later that evening. Karen had to drive across the bridge herself. She slowed down as she approached, and I watched from my porch as she stared up at the giant bold sign mounted above the steel frame. Property of not HOA. She had to drive directly under it. Every single day, twice a day, morning and evening. That sign became her personal reminder that she lost the battle she started. And honestly, that was just the beginning of their humiliation. The end.